Ahead of Tuesday's showdown, Vice President Kamala Harris is in practice sessions, sharpening her attack lines against the former president as a brand new New York Times Siena poll shows the race in a dead heat. Joining me now, Harris-Walz campaign surrogate, Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, member of the Harris-Walz campaign's National Advisory Board. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Yeah, great to be here.
Okay, so we're all looking at this debate. There is a lot at stake for both of these candidates, given how tight this race is. Mark Penn, longtime Democratic strategist, worked for both the Clintons, has this to say. He says, one interview, one debate. Some rah-rah stump speech you read over and over, and voila, you have a 50% chance of being president. He goes on to say, no 2 years of primaries, coalition building, no detailed policy development, and no daily press briefings or tests of leadership. It's only the most important job in the world with a $6 trillion budget and thousands of nuclear weapons. He says real democracy calls for more debates, more interviews. Listen, the policy section of the website remains blank, last I checked. So when are we going to get more from the vice president?
Well, I think you have heard the vice president roll out several very important detailed policy proposals. She just proposed a massive tax cut for small businesses. She's proposed a massive investment in housing to bring the cost of rent and mortgages down for Americans. She's going to go after price gougers to try to make sure that we continue to drive inflation down. She wants an expansion of the child tax credit. She's investing in the middle class. She's talked about an opportunity agenda where everybody has the chance to succeed, which is very different than Donald Trump's agenda. Donald Trump has made it very clear, if you put him back in power, he's going to think about only one group of people, and that's his friends at Mar-a-Lago, another massive tax cut for the richest people in America. So I don't doubt that Kamala Harris will continue to roll out proposals to invest in small businesses, to invest in the middle class. I think the contrast is pretty striking between a candidate on the Democratic side who wants to make sure that we grow the economy from the middle out, and Donald Trump, who still believes in this magical thinking of trickle-down economics, where if you give him and his friends billions of dollars, eventually that'll find its way down to everybody else. That's just not how it works.
Well, you know, there's analysis. These are IRS numbers, so we assume that's neutral data, and they say that every class of taxpayer benefited from the round of tax cuts that came under the Trump administration, that it wasn't just the top 1%, that it really did benefit everybody who pays taxes in any way. We've also got, this week, in talking about the vice president's economic rollout, one of the skeptics of her plans wrote this over the Washington Free Beacon, saying, listening to Harris extol the virtues of enterprise, you'd have no idea that she cast the deciding vote on the spending splurge that drove historic inflation, that her administration has imposed almost $1.4 trillion in regulations, and that she wants to weaken right-to-work laws and wants Congress to pass $5 trillion of new taxes over 10 years.
Well, listen, let's compare the economic record of Donald Trump against the economic record of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Under this administration, we have seen record job growth in this country. We have manufacturing booming, unemployment at a record low. When Donald Trump left office, we had unemployment at a record high. He told us he was
going to... We were in the middle of the pandemic, to be fair.
We were going to rebuild the manufacturing sector under Donald Trump. We lost manufacturing jobs. So there is a clear contrast between Donald Trump's record as president, where our economy fell to pieces, and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who have rebuilt the economy, and by the way, driven down inflation at a rate faster than all of our other high-income nation competitors.
But again, President Trump handed off, he will argue, I'm sure, Tuesday night, an inflation rate of 1.4% in the middle of a pandemic. The majority of jobs lost during the pandemic had come back. We spiked to more than 9%. I mean, 40 years we haven't seen those kinds of numbers.
Correct, and that happened in every single high-income economy because coming out of the pandemic, no country had the supply chains sufficient to be able to withstand the surge in demand. But it is also true that over the last 4 years, inflation has come down faster in the United States than those other countries. GDP has grown at a faster rate than those other countries, and today we are sitting in an economy where anybody who wants a job can get one because we have record low unemployment. Donald Trump is advertising that he is going to bring back the same kind of chaotic economic policies, the same investment in the top 1% in corporations that helped drive our economy into a ditch during his time in office.
What he's going to say is poverty was down, home ownership was up, inflation was at 1.4, gas was at 2.30 something a gallon. I mean, he's going to maybe be happy to stand on his policies. And when we poll people, they tell us they were doing better under President Trump than they've done under this administration. So they do have a head-to-head comparison. And on this issue of inflation and where we go from here, there was a study out this summer from a bunch of folks, including some MIT professors, who said the research shows that mathematically the overwhelming driver of a burst of inflation in 2022 was federal spending, not the supply chain. I mean, I'm no MIT scholar, so I'll defer to them, but he says it was the massive spending that, as I talked about with Senator Cornyn, people on both sides of the aisle voted for under this administration, but there were tough things where the vice president was the tie-breaking vote. She says proudly on the Inflation Reduction Act, which President Biden said this week they shouldn't have named it that, because that's not what it was.
Although, look at the chart. The minute we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, inflation started to decrease at stunning levels in this country. And by the way, that piece of legislation is growing manufacturing jobs all over the country, is cutting prescription drug costs for senior citizens. I'm proud of the fact that we are doing our part to try to clean up the environment. I'm proud of the fact that that legislation finally took on the drug industry and said we're not going to put seniors in a position where they go bankrupt because of their prescription drug costs. Donald Trump was in office for 4 years. He did nothing to take power away from the drug industry. Prescription drug prices skyrocketed under Donald Trump. The Inflation Reduction Act, for the first time, did something about transferring power from the drug industry to regular people. That's the difference between these two candidates. Donald Trump is going to put power in the hands of the big corporations. He's promised the big oil industry that he will do anything they want as long as they donate $1 billion to his reelection campaign. Kamala Harris says that he's going to continue to take power away from the big oil companies, the big drug companies, the big insurance companies, and put that power back in the hands of regular people.
Well, one of his arguing points about the economy is he does want to enable, the industry, oil and gas industry, to do more production. He says we shouldn't be dependent on places that don't have our best interests at heart.
So ask yourself this: were we producing more domestic oil and gas under Donald Trump or under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? We're producing more domestic oil and gas today under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris than under Donald Trump. What we're also doing is making historic new investments in renewable energy. So we're also bringing much more wind power and solar power onto the grid. What Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have shown is that you can do both. You can continue to develop and explore for oil here in the United States, and you can do our part to solve climate change. Under Donald Trump, we weren't doing either. We were drilling for less oil, we were exploring less gas, and we weren't doing anything about the climate crisis.
Okay, let's talk about something else the vice president put out this week, which was raising the corporate tax rate from 21 to 28%. The Joint Committee on Taxation, bipartisan congressional entity, says that actually would mean even the lowest income Americans, they would be paying higher taxes. Because of that, they say, in Reason puts it this way: higher corporate taxes are passed along to consumers, employees, and investors in the form of high prices, lower wages, and lower investment returns. If you buy things, have a job, or save for retirement, higher corporate income taxes will fall on you no matter how many times Biden or Harris try to pretend otherwise.
Yeah, this is obviously the argument made by the billionaire class and the corporate class.
Okay, but by the Joint Committee on Taxation.
If you raise taxes on us, ultimately we will just pass those down to other people. Listen, people want tax fairness in this country. They are sick and tired of these massive American companies paying 0% tax rates. That's what some of the biggest companies in the country were paying. Zero under Donald Trump. There's nobody in this country, Republicans or Democrats, that thinks that's fair except for Donald Trump. So yes, Kamala Harris believes that if you're a corporation in this country, you should pay some taxes. Yes, she believes that if you're making $1 billion in this economy, you should help pay for our schools. You should help try to make our communities safer. I don't think Americans believe this argument that by raising taxes by a couple percentage points on a handful of billionaires, that ultimately is going to ruin the economy. Kamala Harris also says that she's going to cut taxes on small businesses. She's going to use the money that we raise in higher taxes for billionaires and transfer that to tax cuts for small businesses and low-income taxpayers.
All of that's got to work out somewhere on the ledger, and so that's going to mean more taxes, and Joint Taxation Committee says that falls to everyone. So we will watch to see if she wins, what you guys do in Congress, and how you handle it. But thank you for coming in.
Thanks.
Always good to
Appreciate
see you.
it.